Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hello everybody, Q&AK the Retroload here, and I've got a new hardware review for you, and this is something a little bit different in many ways, because I'm not looking at one console, I'm looking at two consoles. But obviously both these consoles are part of the same range. I did kind of do this before in an old video where I looked at the Lynx 1 and Lynx 2 together, although that video is not on my channel anymore, and it's one that I've got to remake. Because I lost it when one of my external HDs failed. Pretty much all my Lynx videos were on that external HD, which is quite depressing. So I haven't managed to that's why a lot of those Lynx videos on my old channel that were really popular aren't my new one. But there we go. But yes, we're going to look at the Master System 1 and 2 because I thought it'd be really cool to look at them both together. And I've actually had a Master System 2 for ages, a long time after I got one at Retrovision charity auction, actually, for about 20 quid, I think, the load of games, I seem to remember. But I recently picked up the magnificent Master System 1, which is obviously the far cooler and more 80s looking console. I'll go over the differences between them, that's the whole point of getting these, but yeah, I really like the look of the Master System 1, more so than the 2. They both have their charms. But the Master System 1s are definitely harder to find. They go for a lot more money. And when I found one, someone selling one locally with a load of games for, I think, I'm trying to think, it was 50 quid. I think I paid for it with about 8 games, I think it was. So yeah, pretty good deal I got on that. Very happy indeed. So let's get into it then. So yeah, Master System 1, the original console, released in 1986, and the Master System 2 didn't come out until after the Mega Drive was released in 1990. So yeah, that was done because by then obviously the Mega Drive was now Sega's main focus, and they wanted to market the Master System as kind of a budget console, more aimed at younger kids and stuff, a bit like Atari had done with the 2600. So they'd kind of copied that model, because obviously when Atari launched the 7800, they had a rebranded Atari 2600 Junior, you know, which was aimed at the younger market, cheap price, stuff like that. So I think it was very similar, with the Master System 2 being sub £50 when the original Master System came out. I seem to remember that in the UK, I think it was $79.99 for the basic pack. It did come down a little bit later on, but I seem to remember it being $79.99 because one of my best friends bought one almost as soon as it came out, called, well, I mentioned it before in one of my videos, James Cairns his name was. So I've also got some of the games in the background there, which I'll go into in due course as well, because I wanted to mention a little bit about the evolution of the box art designs. And I've got my own book, A Compendium of Sega Master System Games, Volume 1, cheap plug here, I'll link it in the top right hand corner for those who want to go and watch that, where I talk about a lot of my own nostalgia of the Master System, playing my friend James's console a lot, and then a couple of my other friends got them later on, Alex and Philip. They both got themselves Master Systems as well, so I had quite a few friends actually who had Master Systems back then. So I was always around their house playing on them. Yeah, I talk a lot about that, and there's lots of homebrew reviews in the book as well, so lots of modern stuff, some more obscure stuff, so like Korean exclusives and Brazilian exclusives, which you wouldn't expect to see probably. So yeah, I mean, there's not really many Master System books on the market. The only other one probably is the Visual Compendium by Bitmap Books. But mine's a completely different type of book, because the Visual Compendium is all about artwork, really. Whereas my book is more about the games, and I say it has loads of obscure stuff, loads of stuff you probably never heard of. Has 3 fantastic developer interviews in there as well. You know, including stuff that's never been printed before anywhere, so lots of exclusive stuff in there. And if you're into your Master System, then you probably want to get that book. But you can go and watch a review of that if you want to know more anyway. Let's get back to the point in hand. My cheek plug is over with the two Master Systems. So obviously the original Master System, which we have here, which was known as the Mark III in Japan. And that is because in Japan, obviously, you had the Sega SG-1000, which was the first Sega console. That was followed by the SG-1000 Mark II, which was just a kind of redesigned SG-1000. It didn't really offer anything extra. It was just a redesign. Not as nice in my opinion either. It was actually more like the design of this. It was a kind of long console. I was also the other way around, because the original SG-1000, I'll show a picture in the corner. The original SG-1000 was smaller, a bit like the Master System 2. And the second one was a big long console, more like the Master System 1. So it's kind of funny that they kind of did these the other way around. So because we'd had the SG-1000, the SG-1000 Mark II, when they did the Master System, the original version of the Master System even, they called it the Mark III. But they did actually release consoles called the Master System in Japan as well. But the Mark III is more well known over there. And another reason for the naming convention of being Mark III in Japan was because it was backwards compatible. So you could use all your old SG-1000 games on the Mark III. The European and North American, the Western models, aren't backwards compatible. Unfortunately, they could be. The only thing that stops them is the cartridge slot. And I think you can use the card games. I might be wrong, but I think you can. But the cartridge slot was a completely different size and shape and stuff. So that kind of stopped you from using them, which is a shame, really. Because I know, obviously, most people think of the SG-1000 as a Western-only console. But it was actually distributed in some, Japanese-only console. But the SG-1000 was released in Australia, New Zealand, and a few European countries. Italy was one, I believe, where it got a limited release. But it was actually fairly popular in Australia and New Zealand. So it's Master System. So it's a shame that they chose to stop people doing that. It's actually a bit like the Mega Drive in a way, because the Mega Drive was backwards compatible with the Master System, but because of the change of the cartridge slot, you had to use a converter. The converter doesn't do anything except change the size of the cartridge slot. There's no hardware in there, which a lot of people don't seem to realise. But yes, they just kept evolving the same hardware. So the Master System is an evolution of the SG-1000 hardware, and the Mega Drive was somewhat of an evolution of the Master System hardware. They're a bit more radical, because the Master System was based on a Z80 CPU with Texas Instruments graphics chip and sound chip, a bit like the SG-1000 was. It's actually exactly the same sound chip, but the graphics chip is an enhanced one, so it can still do the original mode of the SG-1000, which is actually the same as like the MSX and ColecoVision and lots of other consoles. But it also adds loads more colours. I think the palette now is 64, if I remember rightly. And I think it can display 32 on screen, so a lot better than the 16 of the original. It's a shame they didn't upgrade the sound hardware in this model, though. And I say that because in Japan, there was the option of a Yamaha sound module, which made the sound much better, but they never released that in the West, which is a real shame. You can get them. You can actually buy them for Western machines to get the that YM sound. So if you have a Master System, they're actually worth getting those sound cartridges, because the games that support them, it is so much better. So let's have a look at the system itself, the Master System 1, first of all. So obviously on the front we've got our power button on the end here. We have two standard Atari joystick ports, style D plug, 9-pin D plugs. The card slot, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a little while. Weird, I always thought this is really strange that you've got this picture that tells you how to connect it all on the front of the console. Can't think of another console that ever had that. Really, really strange. I don't know why they thought that was needed, but it's kind of iconic and part of the Master System hardware. As well as a reset button and a pause button. A lot of people bemoaned the fact that the pause button was on the console rather than being on a controller, but there we go. And your cartridge slot and some vents there, of course, at the top. There's nothing on the sides at all. It's just these vents on the back there. So we've got Master System, Power Base, PAL, serial number, etc. And you might notice a little door. So there you go, but it's blocked. So that's our expansion socket, which they didn't really use at all, unfortunately. It was more of a Japanese thing, where they created things that could be connected up to it, like disk drives and stuff like the SG-1000 had. But yes, they just kind of used the same case, but blocked it off on the PAL models, which is a shame. They kind of never utilised it like they should have. And there we have AC adapter, RF out. That kind of empty thing there, I think, is the TV switch from North American models. You don't ever get that on PAL models. And AV out, which is an important thing to remember, that you've got AV out, you've got an RGB SCART, basically an RGB socket basically there. So you can do RGB with a SCART on your TV or a monitor. And the Master System 2, so let's get that. So obviously it's smaller, we've already covered the fact that it's smaller. And we've got a basic on-off switch there as opposed to a button. We have a pause button, and that's it. You may notice that, first of all, there's no reset button. So if you wanted to reset it, you literally just have to turn the power off and on again. Not a big deal, I suppose. And then that goes back to reveal our cartridge slot. There we go. Quite like the idea of this door. I thought it was quite a cool design. But you will find a lot of the ones that are out there on eBay and stuff like that, on auction sites, you'll quite often find this door is broken. Some you'll see it's actually missing completely, and some you'll find it's either stuck or broken in some way. So it's actually unusual to find one, I think, that's as nice as this, where it still works properly as it should. Of course, our joystick ports in the front, focus, stupid thing. Nothing on the sides, bottom serial, you'll notice no expansion anymore. That's gone. So they lost that. That was one of the cost-saving measures. Another one of the cost-saving measures, should I say, with the Master System 2. This is perhaps one of the biggest things that annoys people is you only have RF out. There is no option for RGB SCART on the Master System 2. So if you actually want to connect it up to a modern TV, a Master System to a modern TV without modding it, then you want a Master System 1, not a Master System 2, because there is no option to use a SCART cable. Obviously you can still do it with these. It's a lot more awkward though, only if your TV can be manually tuned, which a lot of modern TVs can't. Whereas the good old Master System 1, you've got that brilliant RGB SCART socket you can use on the back. So excellent. And not to mention, you know, as I said, I think the design is much cooler. You will notice as well, actually, you won't really see it in the video, of course, but the plastic from this one to this one is a lot less cheap. Probably, actually, you probably can tell a little bit, because I tap this, you know, it's got a solid sound to it, whereas you tap this, it's like a cheap, empty plastic case. So yeah, you can kind of see where they saved money. Oh, and also, of course, completely forgot, there's no card slot on the Master System 2 either, so you can't use Sega cards with the Master System 2. It was another really big thing about it. To be fair, they kind of, by the time the Master System 2 came out, they've stopped doing Sega cards completely. When the Master System 1 came out originally, the Sega cards were a cheaper way to buy software. You could buy Sega cards for like £15, when the Master System games were like £20 to £30. So, you know, it offered a cheap way to buy software, and there was still some quite cool little titles on cards. So generally a lot smaller in size. So I think the Ninja was a card game originally, actually, that I've got there. Transbot, Hang On, Teddy Boy was another one. F16, I think, was a card game. A lot of the card games, originally card games, were actually re-released on cartridges. Enduro Race was another one, I think, that was a card game. But yeah, they re-released them as cartridges later on. So most of the games, I don't think all of them. I think there's some that they didn't, but I think the ones that they didn't weren't very good games anyway. And that is really all there is to be said about looking at the systems themselves. So let's go over the controllers. I have them to one side here. So I'm just going to grab, first of all, our Master System control pad. So there's the classic Master System control pad, 2 buttons and a kind of weird square joypad. And you'll notice it's very small. You can see it for probably comparison to my hand. I've not got very big hands either. But these were quite small, I think, in size compared to a lot of similar controllers around that time. Certainly the Mega Drive controller's a lot bigger than this. The main fault with these was this joypad is really squashy, and because of the way it's designed in that kind of square shape, it's actually quite hard to be precise with diagonals and stuff. Wasn't really that great. The NES pad was probably better and more precise. They did actually do another version of this pad, which I'll try to find a picture of and stick up in the corner there, where you could screw a thumbstick into the middle to turn it into like a little joystick, like you could with the Atari 7800 controller. But I don't have one of those, unfortunately. But there was, yeah, a version of it that was like that. So that was the standard one that you got with the Master System, 1 and 2. They didn't change that. Another option that was available pretty much from launch was the Sega control stick, which I have one here. Really, really weird looking thing with this great big kind of thing that you have to kind of hold like a gear stick. That's what it always reminded me of. And I never liked these. I thought these were pretty awful as well. So you didn't really have good choice to start with the Master System in terms of controllers. Although that was fixed later on when lots of other people started launching their own controllers. Like Competition Pro did several different joypads that you could use with the Master System and joysticks. So did QuickShot. There's some really good QuickShot ones. Like the QuickShot Maverick, which was like a kind of... I've got 2 of them actually that I use with my Atari computers. It was kind of like an arcade stick, and that had a Sega mode on it. And some of their other joysticks as well, the 2-button ones where the trigger would be 1 button and the top button would be another. So yeah, there was some much better options later on. And of course you can use Mega Drive pads with the Master System. And of course actually in Brazil, I believe, they actually sold Master Systems with Mega Drive pads for a long time. Of course the Master System was very, very, very popular in Brazil, where I think, you know, they're pretty much still making it to this day. You can buy Master Systems that have loads of built-in games rather than being cartridge slot ones. But they went through numerous revisions of the Master System over there that we didn't see here. And they were making games for the Master System right up until the end of the 90s, pretty much. Such was its popularity there. One thing I will mention, actually, you will notice actually about the Sega control stick is it's left-handed. So yeah, and this actually, you can twist it around, which is really strange as well. But yeah, they kind of promoted it as being sort of the first system that suited left-handers. Though I've never actually met a left-hander who wanted to play games differently, because they kind of got used to the way you held a joypad or joystick and used it. I mean, for example, the Lynx, you had the option to press the buttons to turn the screen round to play it left-handed. And actually, the first person I ever knew who got a Lynx, got one at launch actually, because he was in America, in California, and he bought one at launch, my friend Will. And he was left-handed, but he never used it left-handed, he always used it right-handed, because he was used to playing games that way. So I think it was just a gimmick, really. Pointless one at that. And of course, we have to mention the iconic Sega Light Phaser. The NES had the Zapper, and the Master System had the Sega Light Phaser, which I prefer. I think it's a much nicer and cooler looking gun. I think it worked better too as well, personally. The Zapper wasn't exactly inaccurate. I think these were great, and there's a better selection of games, I think, for this than there was for the Zapper. I have actually got some. I've actually got one here. I'll just show you that quickly, because what they do is they put a little icon in the corner to show that you could use it with a gun. So I've got Operation Wolf. I've got quite a few gun games actually, but I grabbed that one because that's probably the most famous. Good old Operation Wolf works really, really well with that gun. One of the earliest Master System games I actually remember playing. So I remember my friend James had this. Actually. That says 1991, but I feel like I played that a lot earlier. But I obviously didn't. I must have played it later on. It actually now makes me wonder if I played it on James's, because I've got a feeling he'd moved on then, because James is quite well off and he got a PC Engine on import and then got a Mega Drive as well. So yeah, perhaps I played it on someone else's. Maybe it was Alex or Philip's console that I played it on. Ah, it's a long time ago. Cool. We're talking, what, 30 years ago now, so my memory is not what it used to be with that, but I do remember playing Operation Wolf with the gun when I was younger. So there, that's all the official Sega controllers, and the good old Light Phaser, of course. So let's talk about those games up there then, because they are pretty important too. So the original box art for the Master System is pretty, let's say famous. Infamous is probably the better turn of phrase, because it was bloody awful with this simplistic thing, like, you know, just a flag there or just a ninja. That, to be honest, that was one of the better ones from the early artwork. Some of it is really terrible, like pro wrestling, where the guy's it seems to have detached his own head, which is just pure weird. And another really crap one was Action Fighter. Good game, but terrible artwork, because it was so simplistic, and, you know, a bit like that. I mean, and that's just terrible. A flag that's kind of falling apart. Who thought that was good? Black Belt, I think, is another one as well that's got really terrible art as well. But I kind of liked the back pattern and the fonts and stuff used, but the fact they didn't have any proper art always annoyed me greatly, and it would have put me off getting one back in the day, to be honest, because I really liked art. And I had a 2600 Junior around that time when my friends had Master Systems, and I loved the art on the Atari 2600 games. Much preferred it. Then they went from that and they moved on to this, which is a kind of upgrade on that, obviously, because now you've still got that same white-black checker in the background, but the art at the bottom is kind of bigger and more bold and stands out a bit more, as you saw Ras down there in Golfmania. And they started adding what they decided was the genre there in the right-hand corner. So it'd say sports or racing or arcade or adventure or whatever. Then we went on to a kind of upgraded one about the time that the Master System 2 was out, where it uses the new Master System logo, which is these on the right, like Sonic the Hedgehog there, because you'll see that matches the that font from the Master System 2. So yes, the Sonic the Hedgehog there. I'll get that down. I actually want to get a cartridge out. So yes, they moved the art into the middle, A similar kind of concept to those ones, and you still had the splash at the corner which told you what type of game it is. So in this case, action. Although obviously it's a platformer, but they didn't really go on conventional. So let's look at a cartridge, long with kind of very square edges. That's all there is to them really. No end labels, which is the most annoying thing about them. I always thought it was criminal to not have end labels on a cartridge. Very, very annoying. Not sure why they thought that no end labels was a good idea. They kind of look cool when they stick out like that though, with this bit obviously kind of matching as well. So there we go. Put one of them in. And I did mention earlier the Sega cards, and I was convinced that I had a Sega card. I'm still sure that I am. I know that somewhere I have Hang On a Sega card. No box, I've just got the card. Actually, I've got the instruction manual as well, I think. But can I find it? Nope. I looked everywhere, and where I thought it was, which was in a drawer in my garage, it doesn't appear to be there. So I would have shown you one. I'll have to stick one up in the top right-hand corner now so you can have a look what a card looks like. But they're quite long, look similar to the PC Engine Hue cards. Quite cool things. I quite liked how the cards looked, actually. Another thing you'll notice is that some of the games did have battery backup as well, so you could save, like Golfomania. Like that promotes that it has battery backup to save your games. RPGs like Fantasy Zone and stuff had that. Cartridges don't look any different though, despite the battery backup. Someone's written on the top of that, but they didn't like it. In fact, it didn't have an end label, so they've written Golfomania on the top. And then, just lastly, there was a lot of third-party software for the Master System in Europe, not so much in America, because it did quite badly in America. It sold less than 2 million units in America, the Master System, whereas it sold over 2 million units, 2.2 million to be exact, actually, in the UK on its own. So the fact they sold more Master Systems in the UK than America really shows how bad it did in America, and kind of shows you how well it did in the UK as well. But in America, it was marketed by Tonka, the toy company, and they did a really crap job. Whereas in the UK, it was marketed by Virgin Mastertronic, who did such a good job that Sega ended up taking them over. But back to the games for a moment. Last of all, you say third party, which is what I was kind of talking about before I got sidetracked slightly. So I've got there Desert Strike from Domark, and there's New Zealand Story from Tech Magic. So they kind of used whatever artwork they felt like. Some of them was kind of kept more traditional to the Sega artwork. Like you can see, there's still the checkerboard pattern on Desert Strike behind the image, whereas New Zealand Story hasn't got that. It's just its own design. So yes, they did what they liked really with their designs. But there's a lot of good games out there for the Master System. Loads of good arcade ports, especially Sega stuff, but there's some great original stuff too. And I'll give a quick plug here, actually, a video I did recently, which has gone down so well that I'm continuing doing a follow-up. I did a video on Sega Master System exclusives, which everyone seems to absolutely love. So I may well do more Sega Master System exclusives, because there's some that others that I could talk about. But yeah, if you want to know what the Master System's got that the NES hasn't, then that's a good video to go and watch. And that's about it really. That's my look at all the Master System games. So in summary, is the Master System worth owning today? It most definitely is. It's a great console with a great library of games, and I prefer it greatly to the NES. I was an Atari kid, say when I had the 2600, I wanted the 7800, but I had the 2600. I did have a couple of friends with 7800s, but I had a lot of friends in Master Systems, and the Master System was, in my opinion, probably the best of the three. the Master System, the NES, and the 7800. On a hardware level, it's better than the 7800 in some ways, but the 7800 is better than the Master System in some ways. They're both more powerful than the NES, but the Master System had the much better game selection, so that kind of wins there. So yeah, what I will say is though, obviously you have to remember that the Mega Drive can play Master System games. In a way, it kind of renders the Master System console kind of meaningless, because if you want to play Master System games, you can do so either through the power-based converter on the Mega Drive, or by literally buying like a Mega EverDrive and just filling it up with Master System ROMs, and you can just do that, and they work absolutely perfectly. So that's another thing you can do. So in a way, you don't really need to own a Master System to enjoy Master System games, but it is kind of cool to have the console itself, especially the Master System 1. I can't really see any reason to buy a Master System 2 unless that was the console you owned as a kid and it's kind of purely nostalgia reasons. But yeah, great all-round console. Shows what was so great about 8-bit gaming, lots of good exclusives, and well worth owning and exploring further in the present day. I've been the Retro Lad. I hope you enjoyed watching my look at the Master System 1 and 2, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon. Bye bye.